Hi, my name is Karina Akido. I'm the managing editor of Canadian Auto Dealer, and I'm here with Cedric Mathieu, who is the vice president and head of Turo in Canada. So, Cedric, maybe you can tell us a little bit about what I'm hearing, a growing demand for zero-emission vehicles in the country, and at the same time provide us with a bit of a background on Turo and what they do.
Yeah, sure. Hi, Karina. Thanks for having me. Yeah, to give you a bit more background on Turo, it's really a peer-to-peer car sharing platform. So we are a platform that connects car owners who own a car but don't use that car all the time with people who need a car. So it's a very simple concept. It's about connecting these two people and making the cars around us more available for people who don't have cars. And something we've been working on for the past 10 years in the US and the past 4.5 years in Canada. And what we've seen in the data recently and really more and more over the past year or so is an acceleration towards electric cars on the platform, being listed on our platform and being rented on the platform. And that's really, I think, an interesting trend that tells a lot about how people behaviors are changing and how their perception of EVs is changing as well. So for instance, we have seen this year, like throughout 2020, that the number of electric cars available on the platform has grown twice as fast as gas-powered cars. So I think it's an interesting data point. The new cars being listed on Turo, 5% of those cars are now electric cars, which is more than what you would see in the kind of typical car sales, currently in Canada. And you also have interesting differences by province. For instance, in British Columbia, you have more than 10% of cars being listed that are actually electric cars. So when you start combining all those trends together, I think you see that a platform like Turo is really at the forefront of the electrification of cars. And we think this is great for the adoption of electric cars in general, because we really think that our platform helps take down two of the main barriers to adoption of electric cars, which is price and the consumer confidence in those cars.
So let's broaden this a little bit. With the data you mentioned, and maybe if you have any more to share, what would this mean for the Canadian automotive industry, just in general?
Yeah, well, I think what's interesting is really the pace at which this is growing. We saw roughly the share of new electric cars being listed on the platform double this year. And so if you kind of compound that trend over the next 5 years, say, we think that we're really heading to a world where in 5 years from now, more than half of the cars listed on the platform will be electric. Which is much more than some of the goals that the federal government has set for electric cars adoption and sales in Canada by the year 2025. And so I really think it's a sign that people are willing to, are curious about electric cars in general. And I think that's what our platform is helping people do, is to understand electric cars a little bit better. If you look at some surveys out there and studies that have been done, there's actually a lot of discussion around electric cars in the country, and you have news about electric cars and OEMs investing in electric plants in Canada sometimes. But people don't know electric cars that well. You have a recent study by J.D. Power that showed that 68% of Canadians had never really been in an electric car, and about 20% of them basically saying that they didn't know much about electric cars at all. And so I think it's a result of many things, but there's a reality that is that today in dealerships across the country, there's just a lack of inventory for people to try out those cars and really do test drives and get their hands behind the wheel of an electric car. And so I think that's where our platform fills a gap. People see Turo as a way of test driving those cars and seeing if those cars actually fit their lifestyle. And I think that's something that's really important if you want to really boost the adoption of electric cars and have electric cars become really mainstream, you have to get people to use them. You have to get people to drive them to kind of break down those psychological barrier around, range anxiety, for instance, or things like that. So I think it's really a sign that there's interest, but that interest is just not really addressed and served today by the general auto industry. I think our platform plays that role and helps people just get more comfortable with electric in general.
Cedric, my last question for you is around the price of an electric vehicle or a zero emissions vehicle. Now, how you did mention earlier at this point that the cost may be a bit higher than consumers can afford. So is there any way, is there any data from Turo that shows how they're helping to offset this?
Yeah, absolutely. I think when you look at electric cars in general, they are expensive cars. As of today, this is one of the other main barriers to adoption. And we see a lot of electric car owners actually use our platform as a way to offset the cost of car ownership and the particularly high cost of car ownership for electric cars. That's probably why we see more electric cars on the road than in the general car population as a proportion. And so on average in Q3 of this year, for instance, to give you a sense, electric car owners on Turo made an average of $890 per month sharing their cars with others on Turo. So as you can imagine, this is a substantial amount of money that could really help you pay for your car on a monthly basis. And so we think this is also very interesting, and that's why we think peer-to-peer car sharing has really a role to play in making electric cars more affordable in general, until hopefully OEMs and car manufacturers around the world drive down the price of new electric cars in the next few years. But peer-to-peer car sharing will really stay like a very interesting tool for people to be able to afford those cars.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Cedric, for taking the time to do this interview. And I wish you and your family good health and safety, especially now during this second wave of COVID-19.
Thank you, Karina, and same to you.